about the customer experience and creating these touchless stores. So all the way from Sweden, we have Daniel Lundh. Daniel, welcome to the Retail Perch.
Thanks so much, Shikar. Great to be part, and thanks for having me.
Terrific. Well, Daniel, you have the floor. Go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your company, and what you guys do.
Sure, absolutely. My pleasure. As you said, I'm in Stockholm, Sweden. So it's really getting cold here now. Born and raised in Stockholm, always been an entrepreneur to heart. I think I actually started my first company while I still was in school. So before internet, I started my first one, and it really stuck to me, the feeling of taking an idea and bringing it to market. Even if it's a product or a service, just accomplishing that journey. I think people do tend to have great ideas, but it's not the same thing as going through the whole journey of bringing it to market. So that really stuck with me, and it kept me, in the entrepreneurial spirit since then. So it has taken me to different industries and different countries, always trying to find what I would call like a win-win. And if we can eventually reach a win-win-win, you have something. If you're really solving a problem, but everyone is benefiting from it, you will have a sustainable company. So that has led up to what I'm currently doing, where I'm living and breathing and thinking about 24/7. It is Storekey and Lifvs. Would love to tell you more about it, obviously, but to give you some context and background, I've never worked in retail. And I've never worked, extra during summer at a grocery retailer that tend to be like the summer gig for many teenage kids. But that said, we saw that there was a big gap in the market when it came to grocery retail. And this is a transformation that happened in Sweden and started back in the early 90s, where Swedish grocery retailers, there are 2-3 big brands. I guess that they took a look at the US market, and they saw the Targets and the Walmarts and these big box stores. So they started to do the same thing here in Sweden. They created these big box stores on cheap land and had customers driving to their locations. And while they did that, they closed down the local stores, the local convenience stores, the small mom and pop stores. So more than half of the number of grocery stores we lost during that time. So leaving mostly the rural areas of Sweden, it's quite of a large country aerial wise, given our population, leaving these towns of like 1,000 people or 2,000 people without access to groceries. So we really saw that as an opportunity of like, how can we kind of reestablish that type of service in these markets where the traditional retailer weren't profitable. But at the same time, which we felt was very important to be a sustainable business again, to keep a price level that's still accepted by the consumer. So, I mean, we can open up a store and we charge, $5 a can of Coke. We might sell one and not many more. So how can we keep that price level down? And as you all know about retail, it's about controlling our cost. So the biggest cost driver usually is rent and staff. So we felt that if we can find a way to leverage technology and reestablish this service, but run them and manage these stores from remote, we can take away the biggest cost drivers here and keep that price point for the consumer. So we went on to build a technical platform, which is named Storekey. So when I explain this to a person, the easiest way would be like, we operate these stores like if it was an e-commerce, right? We sit from remote, we control the assortment and pricing and work with coupons and generating rebate checks. We see what people buy, what they don't buy, like typical what you can do on e-commerce, but we are now bringing a store to your location and let you walk into the store completely unmanned, but we're holding your hand while you're in the store because you use an app to kind of access the store where you scan the items, access your individual coupons and do the checkout. You do all that in our platform. So we can communicate with you while you're there. So in a weird way, we become very personalized, as they don't feel alone, even though they walk into an unstaffed store.
Like a grocery vending machine.
A big grocery vending machine, absolutely. Yeah. But you can walk in there and you can touch the avocado to see if it's ripe. And I think that's is still the biggest challenge when it comes to groceries and the whole digitalization of groceries. And when it comes to e-commerce, is that as an individual, you have, first of all, groceries, it has an urge of tendency of the like immediacy right now, that I want salmon today. And I don't want to put in an order somewhere and wait for that to come next Tuesday. Like I want it today.
Right.
So that's one challenge. The second challenge is the cost of delivery for e-commerce when it comes to groceries. It's just so high because you have refrigerated goods and you have short durability. So that's another challenge you have. And then the third one is that you have to, from a consumer perspective, trust that grocer to send you those perfect ripe avocados or bananas or whatever it might be. And the trust, at least in Europe, is not there yet. I know in Asia, they have come much further when it comes to that. So that was our angle, to see that these underserved rural areas don't have access to e-commerce. There's no one's going to deliver milk to them across the country. There's no money to make on that. So how about we bring a store to you, add that convenience of both in vicinity, but also in open hours, because then we can be open 24/7. You can pop in at any time. So in a sense, yes, becomes this big vending machine, but you can still get inspiration and you can touch and feel and smell, which is probably one of the biggest advantages of having a physical store, is creating that type of other senses, right? So that's what we started, and we started our first store in the spring of 2019, and since then we've been opening up stores pretty much every month. So we're close to 30 stores now. So we even beat Amazon to the punch. Like we have more stores than Amazon, but they will sure pass us pretty soon. But it's super exciting to see that the stores are so appreciated as when we open up a store, and we can do that within a day, and that's the most awesome thing.
Right. So the challenge I can see, I'm sure you obviously addressed this, is trying to understand demand supply, right? So when you go to a location and you put up a store, how do you make sure because you have limited square footage, you have to be very good with understanding what's going to be in demand, because every now square foot, so to say, carefully thought about.
Absolutely. And that was, again, given the background of ours, that none of us founders were within grocery retail before, we had to learn a lot, and we have to build a team with expertise and kind of building that around them. But in the beginning, we were focusing on kind of trying to standardize the assortment, if you will, to have as wide assortment as possible, but make it as standardized as we can. Because also when it comes to the supplier side, we can then kind of create some sort of volume, again, to keep our margins. But what we've learned very early on is that even though we identify a location, say that, just give you some like round numbers, there's a town of 1,000 people, their store closed 5 years ago, and there's a half an hour drive to the nearest city where they can get groceries. So we have that in the middle of Sweden, and then we have one location looking at exact the same in the south of Sweden. It was night and day when it came down to the assortment, what they wanted to buy. So we had to adjust how can we adjust the assortment to fit the local demand and what they wanted. But the advantage of having everything data-driven in one system makes it so much easier, right? So when we open up a store, within 2 weeks, we know what this store is heading to. Will this store be more of a convenience store? Or will this store be the ones that you buy your baking goods? Or should we increase the produce section? All this, the system can tell us within just a couple of weeks after we open. And obviously in the beginning, we didn't know anything. We just put out an assortment and see what's sold, and then we make adjustments. But we even took it one step further, which I think was kind of unique to us, where if we went out to a city or a town and said, we're going to open our store here the next month, please download our app, register. So literally that become your key to the store. And while you do that, we want you to scan your fridge. So we put in a feature in the app. So we had our future customer scanning their fridge and pantries in their house. And we were able to pull that data to see what type of assortment are this demographic buying today.
Yeah. No,
So yeah, just to give you an example, like orange juice, right? You can have 7 different types of quality of orange juice. So why would we go out there giving the limitation of our square footage where we can only fit perhaps one brand of orange juice? Instead of a guessing game, we know beforehand. And it kind of killed 2 birds in one stone, because then the argument that a consumer might have is like, oh, it's just a small store, they might not fit what I usually buy. But if we do it this way, we kind of turn it around and say, we're gonna
personalize your assortment.
Yes, exactly, right.
Yeah.
So very data driven, to like 100% almost, but also the ability to then, use your kind of always the guts of a storekeeper to kind of put in a local honey or farmer's product or something like that that's very unique to that specific store. So I would say we have like an 80-20 kind of ratio, where 80% would be your typical kind of grocery items, and 20% is very, very local.
Wow. So the whole customer experience is driven through your app, right? That the app gets them access to the store, and then the shopper is scanning the products as they're selecting them, and then can walk out.
Correct.
Yeah. So you're not using any computer vision like Amazon or something.
Yeah. Well, that's a very common question that we do get. Like, because I would rank if you talk about autonomous stores, I would rank them in 2 different categories. So one would be our ones, which is the app-based version, and the other one would be the Amazon version, if we should call it like that use cameras. So we looked into that solution as well. And when we started this in back in late 2018, Amazon just opened kind of, I think, the first store, and competitors to Amazon building these type of systems were just emerging, and the cost of those cameras was just like, I mean, I'm going to sell milk and minced meat. How can I pay for it? How can I pay for this? So we kind of ruled it out just because of the cost of investment. But then when we start to think about what do we want to create here? Well, we want to create, in the Lifvs brand, we want to create a store that's very personalized, that don't feel that is autonomous, that doesn't feel that it's unmanned. And if I can only track my customers by camera, I mean, I can pull a lot of data from that, but there's no way for me to communicate if I can only track them.
Yeah.
So the plus side of having the customer on your platform during the purchase journey or customer journey is, trumps everything. It trumps the coolness factor for a customer to walk in, grab something and walk out, because just not only for us be able to drive top line where we can create different kind of populate coupons or recipes based on what they do in store, but also help customers find the item in store, or like do that typical stuff that customers do ask. Where can I find this honey? The camera tracking can't help you with that,
right.
but we can.
So that all makes a lot of sense, Daniel. But I got to ask you, as a retailer of many years, the first thing that comes to my mind is, what kind of shrink do you look at? Do you have people, or how badly do you have people taking advantage of, your operation, coming in, maybe they scan a few items, but walk out with more? Right.
Again, a very typical question. And when you have an autonomous unmanned store, what is the shrinkage? What's the shoplifting level? And we're not that naive to say that we don't have any shoplifting. We do. Every retailer do. But what we have learned, even though we talk with these big grocery stores chains of the world, they're not that happy to discuss openly what their kind of shrinkage level is when it comes to shoplifting. But we tend to kind of find out anyway. And we are at par with, I would say, the industry level, even though we don't have staff there.
Yeah.
And I can give you two reasons why. The first one is that if you, Gary, walk into our store, we know it's you. You have to identify yourself. So if you are walking in there with intention of taking a can of Coke, go to the gas station where nobody knows you, then go to a store where you identify yourself. So that's kind of the first reason why we have a lower kind of shrinkage level. The second would be that based on the locations where we establish, right? So if you establish in an area of 2,000 people, they tend to know each other. So if 1,999 of them are nice people, that creates 1,999 kind of mini cops, policemen for us. They call us, they text us, hey, there's a guy in the store, I don't know that guy, you know? So that kind of keeps it kind of in within the family, if you will. We become part of the community.
Source security.
Yeah, in a sense, right? And just to give you that perfect example, you know, when as I mentioned, the snow came, and the first winter when we had stores out in the rural areas and snow come, we didn't know how the stores will survive, like how the door will jam because packed of snow, but we are unmanned. So how can we control that? So we literally put a broom outside the door, and our customers are kind of
sweeping the. That's great.
Yeah, I would never do that at my local store here in Stockholm. I would complain if there's snow in front of the door, right?
And plus, I would say the consumer psychology. I think when you expect people to trust you and you expect good behavior, people tend to conform to that, as opposed to if you put defensive mechanism where you're suspicious of people, you're more likely to invite people with bad behavior.
Absolutely. But I would also say that, you know, in the beginning, it was just like, let's see where it goes. How many, do people scan one milk, take two, you know, all that typical things that could happen. Is it intentionally, is it unintentionally? And sometimes it is unintentionally, you know, that you thought that you bought three, you scanned three times. But given that everything is data driven, we always know what we should have on shelf. So we always find that discrepancy within a time frame that most is 24 hours. So when we find a discrepancy, we can then, the system tells us this ought to happen, you know, Sunday afternoon. And then we could manually, if we will, check the cameras and say, well, it was Chikar was in there, and you know, did he do this purposely, or was it just, you know, he didn't mean to do it? Then the system triggers and kind of auto block a person or a customer if they perhaps walk into the store and they don't buy anything. That might happen, but if you do that in the middle of the night at 3:30 in the morning, and you do it on a Sunday and then the next weekend as well, the system will alert and block you, and then it's for a manual check. So we have the technology to kind of prevent misuse or malbehavior of the system, but it's rather serving the 1,909 of a village than protecting the whole store for just one person.
Sure.
Right. So do you, Daniel, this is fascinating. Do you see this model applicable to certain geographic regions, or do you think this has universal appeal no matter which market you're in?
Definitely universal. I would say the only challenge that we have is that it's based on a smartphone kind of system, right? This specific platform is based on a smartphone. So if you have a territory that don't have that kind of adaptivity of smartphones, that would be a challenge. But then we can always tailor the system to, you know, accept credit cards in some fashion. But definitely technology is here to, you know, reestablish this type of service where traditional retail can't survive. So that goes for, I mean, I don't know how many food deserts are around in the US, but there are plenty that would be in need of this type of service.
Right.
But the fascinating thing to me, what happened was when we started this, you know, was very focused around the grocery and our food deserts. But what we have built as far as a platform is applicable to any type of retail. It doesn't have to be groceries, right?
Right.
So I usually give this example. If Gary, I recommend you a book, right? And you go down to Barnes and Noble and you're going to try to find that book. It's like, good luck. You know, where do I even look? Is it title? Is it author? Is it, section? So you have to find a person, and that person can't even answer. So they have to go into a computer and search. I mean, you can do that in your phone, right? I mean, just point the customer to the direction, and once you find that book, check out in your phone, and you're in and out. And this is what we see as a trend overall in retail. And if you definitely think about the next generation, Generation Z, it's like they are digital natives. There are so many surveys that they even turn down a store if they see there's a physical line. Like they're not used to waiting around. So I think every retailer needs to adapt to that and provide different ways of checkout. If that's a self-checkout kiosk, or if it's a mobile checkout, if it's camera tracking, whatever it might be, they have to do something. But what I keep kind of trying to make them understand is that the customer is not one. So you can't only have one type of system and think that everybody's going to use the system. Or like, if I walk into a store, perhaps this time I want to talk to a person, or I want inspiration. But next time I walk into the same store, I'm in and out. So you have to have these different channels and ways of, meeting the demands of the customer.
Right.
And you especially saw that during COVID. Sweden took a different approach when it came to lockdown, but still, retail got really, really hurt. And the ones that were able to survive were the retailers that were on some sort of a platform, so they could react and adapt, right? So they could offer, curbside pickup or pick up in store, click and collect, and all that, because they were kind of digitalized ready.
Yeah.
But the retail that were still in their old-fashioned POS system, they had no option. They just had to close shop. And who knows when the next pandemic comes, or when Generation Z, says we're not going to shop in your store because it's too old-fashioned as the customer journey. And that's going to happen for sure. That we already know. So I think the whole retail is under a huge transformation, which is super exciting, but it's also quite scary because it's such a low margin business in general, right? So you have to, it's not only about meeting demands of the consumer, it's about, having control of the inventory and, all that, so, binding capital.
Yeah. So I'm curious.
Go ahead, Gary. Go ahead.
Sorry, Shaker. If the stores are unmanned, how do you handle distribution and how do you handle restocking? Here in the States, and I've forgotten over in Sweden how things are handled, but a typical grocery store will have multiple deliveries, right? Some product coming from their own distribution center, others, local vendors. So you've got stuff coming into the store all hours of the day. How do you address that?
Yeah, so that was one of the biggest challenges, obviously, in the beginning. As we started to build this chain, we knew from day one that we needed the advantage of scale when it comes to the whole supply chain. So if we would order dairy products, they are used to rolling in, like, what do you call it, like trolleys of items. And we when we put in an order, we said we want 5 milk, and then we want 2 half and half, and then they're like, what? And we want it to this field in the middle of nowhere. So we knew from day one that we needed to reach scale to be able to get the attention. But we kind of reversed that psychology, and we then went to this biggest dairy producer or provider and asked them, like, where do you sell your products today? Because these big grocers tend to do more EMV, like more white own label. So they are losing kind of brand awareness of their own brand today at these big grocery chains. So they were super excited of getting that back on shelf again, or in the fridge. And then was always about kind of meeting halfway, like where can we meet halfway when it comes to taking care of the cost of supply chain here? Because we want to work with you guys and you want to work with us. And as soon as we started to create a cluster of stores, so one cluster could contain 4 to 5 stores, and we can have one staff kind of taking care of that one cluster.
Yeah.
So in the morning, everything again, data driven. In the morning, they log on and the system will tell them, today you're going to go to store number 3. You're going to give some TLC to shelf number 4 and 6, and you're going to meet the delivery of dairy products at 2 in the morning,
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. And then we're kind of routing them where to go. But what we then saw after a year in was that this is really putting a pressure when it comes to planning, because as you say, the deliveries can come from multiple sources. And if we have to be there to meet and greet, to take the delivery every time and replenish the shelves, we're never going to be able to scale.
Yeah.
So then we created the double size of the store. So that store would be in square footage, about like 600 square footage, but it has back storage, both a dry room and a cold room.
Okay.
So now we don't even have to be there. So the system just alerts us, now the delivery came from XYZ supplier or distributor, and it could sit there. We don't have to attend to it immediately. And that has really helped us to scale more. So we source, but we source it directly from the supplier. So what happened here in Sweden is also these big grocers tend to own the distribution market as well.
Mhm.
So that's why it's hard to get into a new market, because like, where can you source the food? Because they own it. So we go directly to the Heinz of the world, or and say, we have limited space on our shelves. We don't have room to have 5 different brands of ketchup. So who it's going to be? It's going to be you guys or the next guys, and you source it from the supplier. So that's how we went about it.
So how do you handle the customer side of the demand? So what if I've got a big party and I go and clean out your store? Is there a limit that you're placing on how much people can buy from your store at a given transaction?
No limits. No, I mean, the system, the thing is, the distribution is so good. So if we would run out, we'll maximum, the next day we'll replenish again. It's more of a challenge of finding that perfect level of quantity, right? So another learnings that we had to make was that, categorize the assortment. So in the beginning, each item had the same value, right? So if the soy sauce were empty, that was as big of a disaster as if milk or eggs were empty.
Yeah.
And so we had to trim the system of saying that those A categories can never be sold out.
Right.
But then you also have the aspect of having fresh groceries, right? So you have a durability. So always trying to minimize your food waste, so you don't have shrinkage on that side, but never be sold out on these A categories. If somebody would clean out the store, I'll send them an extra Christmas present and thank you. But no, that would be a good problem to have.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems like this is obviously a big data problem, right? So it's optimizing, understanding data, and creating that equilibrium between supply, demand, and maybe even proactively understanding your customer, like you're doing. Like before you open the store, you're trying to get a sense of what these people would want. I think being proactive about your data and predictive is probably a big aspect of what you do.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see, now we're getting to close to 3 years in this industry, and the recommendations that the Storekey platform is giving us as far as coupons or drivers is just incredible, where it was like a year ago. Mm-hmm. Because there's the amount of data we're able to collect during the way. And the good thing here is that if you think about it, like, the customer walks in, identify themselves as they walk in. So we have data on the whole journey, not when they're exiting the door by the cash register and identify themselves as a member. We have the whole journey. So we have so much data, and it's all in one place. So we know it's accurate. So it's not coming from different silos of data collections. It's all in one. And that makes it so much easier for us to act on that data. And I made a promise to myself and the company, like we will never send a coupon on meat to a vegetarian, like, you know, because we have that data. And I think if you think about it from a customer perspective, I think personalization is something for the future, like it's a must-have. And I think that your willingness to share your data is there if you get something in return. But most of these loyalty programs, sometimes you're a member, but you don't know why, because you don't understand the loyalty program. And sometimes it just pops in a 5% discount. It's like, oh, but why? You know? Well, and I get this generic coupon that is not tied to me. The only thing that they got right was my name, you know? So I think there's a frustration from the consumer level that they think that, well, I give you this, I feed you with my data, but you're not leveraging that data to my liking. And think about a retailer. If a retailer has their own app, if you would have a Kroger app or a Walmart app and whatnot, the app provider will always ask you to allow them to send you push notifications. And most of us as customers and consumers, we disable that. So the reach that they have is an average of about 18%. Our reach is at 82. And that speaks volumes to me, because then we know that our customers want our communication. Because again, we're not, sending a discount on meat to a vegetarian.
Right.
So it's always relevant, right? So I always say that retail is about nuts and bolts controlling cost, absolutely, but it's about solving problems. It's about solving customer problems. And those problems tend to look different on any given day. And if you cannot solve those problems, there's no way for you to build loyalty and brand awareness. It's all about that.
Yeah.
And if you can have tools to help you with that, utilize them, use them, because they're out there. And I'm not speaking only about Storekey, on any other, if it's automation about coupon or mining the data, or, you have so many possibilities here to make it right. But you have to be able to take that leap.
So I got an interesting question here for you, Daniel, slightly digressing. So, a lot of retailers talk about growing their customer, right? How to make them more valuable. How do you increase the basket size? How do you drive profitability, right? So when you're looking at your business model, do you look at it as, hey, is average store sales per quarter going up? Are we driving basket sizes up? I mean, are those metrics even important? Because you're really putting these in places where you kind of have a fixed population, and you're probably the only game in town in some sense. So do those metrics even make sense in that context?
We have different KPIs that we always look at, right? So yes, average receipt basket size is one of them. A number of receipts, obviously, typically retail. But we also see the life cycle of a customer. So the frequency of a customer is super important to us. As we open up a store, we have what do you call, like a surplus. We have more customers the first month than are people living in that town, because people from other towns are coming by. We become a destination. Yeah, and then the second month we kind of drop 40%, and that just killed my stomach, I assure you. The second month, like, what the heck is going on?
Right.
But then we deep dive in the data, and we saw the number of households were still the same. So both people in the household came the first month to try it out, but then you come into every day. Usually it's the one person in the household who tend to do the shopping.
Yeah.
So the number of households will stick the same. So that would be the one KPI. How many do we reach in our vicinity? And then the metrics would be, how can we twist and work with drivers like coupons or whatnot to be able to add that fifth or sixth item to the basket. We play around with it all the time. We even played around with kind of having a subscription model, if you will, where customers are willing to pay a fee for future rebates. It was super exciting to kind of try that out. So again, falling back to it's one platform for us, it's so much easier to not only A/B test but ABCD test at all time, and see what sticks. So it's super exciting to kind of, I mean, operational excellence is about twisting those kind of turn bolts all the time and see where it sticks. And we're able to do that, and we can do it from remote, which is super convenient for us.
Yeah. No, this is fascinating. I'm curious to, actually see what our listeners think about this. If they find something like this applicable in the U.S. market, would they even consider? I mean, we have a lot of, there's, I think grocery retail is going through a very interesting phase right now, where people are trying to figure out. They know e-commerce is on the upswing, but they don't know how to make it profitable, right? So they're caught in this weird, between rock and a hard place type of situation where, one channel is taking off, but you still haven't figured out how to make it profitable, which means it's eating into your overall margins, right? And yet you have to keep it going. So this seems like a very exciting format for retail, Gary. And clearly, as people like Amazon have been, experimenting with this, but like Daniel said, the cost of each store is still pretty high. I'm sure technology try to catch up to see if this can be commoditized in some fashion.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And so, sorry, Gary, but I just want to give you one example that I think when it works as a beautiful kind of example. So we have one franchisee, and he's an existing grocery retailer. So, he has that one store within his town, and he's the grocer, he's the king in his town. But he also identified kind of smaller kind of towns around his establishment. So he has 4 Lifvs stores working as satellite stores. So his whole supply chain is going through his main store, and then he's replenishing these satellite stores. So it's a way for him to establish a bigger footprint in the kind of area outside his normal kind of vicinity that of customers, and again, he has increased his overall turnover, and he's way more profitable today because also now it's more data driven as a whole.
Right.
He has more control, and he knows what sticks, what rebates goes well or not. So, and it's just beautiful to see that it could also be a way to kind of extend your chain of satellite stores. Because I think even though if you're a big box player, the pendant had kind of going back now. So now you want to get close to the customers, and we're trying to figure out ways to do that. Is it e-commerce? Is it click and collect boxes? Is it dark stores? Or how do we get closer to the consumer? So there will be different ways of doing that. But we found a way of being profitable where others can't be by making it this way. Yeah. But what I'm super excited about is it's more about the whole, transformation of retail in general, where it's going to go.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating model. Shaker, I think we got to have Daniel back. I'd love to see where he's at a year from now.
Oh, absolutely.
And, what's going on and how you've continued to transform the market there.
That's right. And not to forget that, Daniel, if you give us your address, we'll mail you the Retail Perch coffee mug, and you can have some of that really good sweet coffee.
The real reason for being on this.
That's right.
Yes.
Get the mug. So, no, this has been fascinating. I think I can keep talking to you the whole day. I think I'm just not sure if our listeners would have reached their destination and turned off their, car, peeled to their seats. But Daniel, this is amazing. I think clearly you guys have found a way to make this model work and scale. So I'm sure your learnings are going to be valuable no matter which market you get into. I want to wish you guys all the very best, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the United States. So do you have any presence in the US market right now?
You know what, we're in talks with several retail chains as for now. So I would be disappointed if we don't have some sort of a presence during next year. But I don't think it would perhaps be under the Lifvs brand. Perhaps it would be more of somebody who licensed the Storekey platform to adapt. Just white labeled the technology and if that would turn out to be a grocery or a convenience store or a gas station or a bookstore, who knows?
Right.
But several talks, which is obviously super exciting. And no, I'm sure, and I would be happy to circle back in a year from now, because to me, a year in the startup world is way ahead.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and they said, a year in a startup world is like dog years, right?
Yeah.
1 year is like 7, if not more.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
right.
and also what the number of gray hairs you get, it's adding on.
Well, I guess Gary, he's saying that I've been in the startup world for a long time. Well, I guess I'm still not where Gary's at yet. They're still on my head, at least.
Yeah, no, I'm just losing it.
No, but this has been a terrific conversation, and we hope our listeners found it as fascinating as we did. And we'd love to get your feedback. You can write to us, the retail perch at birdseye.com. And listen, if you have any questions of Daniel, or you want to find out more about his technology, how can our listeners reach you, Daniel?
No, happy to answer any questions, and please do reach out to me. And I think the easiest way would be on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So just search there, Daniel Lundh, and I should pop up there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again. And guys, it's been great, I think, coming back on the show, and we have some exciting speakers lined up here the next couple of weeks, touching varied topics. And I think you start understanding we're in close to our 60th episode here, Gary.
Wow.
And I don't think we've had 2 episodes on the same topic, really.
No, I agree.
A sense of the breadth of the, and appreciation of how broad retail is and how many things it takes to come together to make it happen. And future looks exciting. So
yeah. So Daniel, thank you for being with us, and good luck with everything. We'll look forward to talking with you again soon.
Yep.
Yes, my pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.
Yes,
thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Make sure to join us every Monday and connect with us at the Retail Perch on Instagram and Facebook.
And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at theretailperch@birdseye.com.
Until next time, this is Shaker.
And this is Gary, signing off.